Now, China's foreign minister has told diplomats from Arab and Muslim majority countries that the world must act urgently to stop a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The officials are in Beijing to call on international powers, including China, to pressure Israel into accepting a ceasefire. They also want help in speeding up the delivery of humanitarian aid to Palestinians.
The international community must act urgently, taking effective measures to prevent this tragedy from spreading. China firmly stands with justice and fairness in this conflict. Since the conflict broke out, we have been working hard to de-escalate, protect the safety of civilians, expand humanitarian relief, prevent a humanitarian disaster, and call for a two-state solution and the early realization of a comprehensive, just and lasting solution to the Palestinian issue.
两国方案早日实现巴勒斯坦问题。
Now, for the very latest on the conflict, let's bring in Arise chief correspondent John Cookson, who is monitoring developments from London. Good day, John. So great to have you on the program. We're going to get straight into it, where, of course, you know, the images of the premature babies caught the world's attention. Now, what more can you tell us about the babies being evacuated from Shifa hospital in what seems like a very positive development?
Hi there, great to be on Newsday. And yes, some good news for once to begin this segment at least, that these babies, it's estimated between 29 and 31 premature babies that were frankly on the verge of dying at the hospital where they were born, have now been transferred to the Emirati hospital in Rafah in Egypt, where the Palestinian Red Crescent is saying that they're in good condition, most of them at least. Sadly, their parents, in many cases, are dead or missing, and one can only imagine those parents who are still alive and in Gaza just wondering what's happened to their babies. But at least some good news in the sense that these babies are now getting proper care and are expected to survive. That's the good news. The bad news, of course, continues. Out of Gaza, there are 300 critically ill patients still in Shifa hospital from whence the babies came. And heaven knows how they're going to survive in the coming days as the hospital finds it more and more difficult to operate. In total, the Palestinian authorities, which are controlled in Gaza by Hamas, claim that 12,300 Palestinians, men, women and children, have died since October the 7th, since the Israeli counterattack, and that an estimated 2,000, remain dead, buried under rubble. So that's nearly 15,000 Palestinians killed so far. I mean, these figures are just, sort of beg a belief, and you don't want to believe it, but I have to say that figure probably is on the low side. But that's where we're at. Some good news and some rather bad news coming out of Gaza today.
Now, as we hear those shocking figures of casualties, like you say, that are most likely underestimated, we're still hoping for more good news, especially with regards to the hostages. Is there any progress on the hostage negotiations?
Anyone who says they know something about the hostage situation is a fool, because all of these negotiations, especially in the Middle East, go on behind closed doors. Very sensitive details are discussed because Hamas will not release hostages out of the goodness of their hearts, as I've said many times before. There will be a quid pro quo on this. Now, in the past, there's been an exchange of bodies between Palestinians and the Israelis, an exchange of money. Every which way negotiation will be considered at the moment. Qatar being the host for these negotiations, it's clear that Washington is trying to push ahead on this, and the Qataris came out last night and said it's all down to logistics, no more than that. But clearly there is a stumbling block. Hamas may be asking for something which the Israelis are not prepared to do, for example, the exchange of prisoners, of Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. We just don't know, and no one really knows. And when the release comes, as it surely will, by the sound of things, it will probably be the elderly and some of the women and children that are being currently held by Hamas. And just remind Arise viewers, the youngest hostage is just 3 months old.
And of course, at the center of this conversation at the moment is Al-Shifa Hospital. The Israelis say they have found at least one underground tunnel likely used by Hamas. What's the likelihood that there are several more?
Oh, there'll be more. I mean, there are around 300 kilometers of tunnels beneath Gaza itself, and certainly there will be more in and around the Al-Shifa Hospital. But the command and control center that the Israelis said they had intelligence of has not yet been found. They found this 10-meter deep tunnel, which we're looking at now, which is 50 meters long, and some military paraphernalia. But the command and control center, which the Israelis claimed was under the hospital, and that was supported in part by American intelligence, who backtracked slightly, saying it was a node rather than command center. I don't know what a node is. But who knows? But the big command center that the Israelis claimed was under Al-Shifa Hospital has not yet been found. Now, whether it will be found, we'll have to wait and see in the coming days. You would have thought that the Israelis would have found it by now, but there's a delicate situation there. It's a very dangerous area for the Israelis to operate. So we'll have to wait and see.
Right, now shifting our attention to international diplomatic positions on this crisis, President Biden seems to think that Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank can be reunited once the conflict is over. Are we being overly optimistic with this, or should we hope for that outcome?
Sorry, President Biden, I'm afraid you're way off course here. He wrote an opinion piece in the Washington Post over the weekend saying that there should be a reuniting of the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza in the future and a revival of the two-state solution. But look, there is so much animosity between the leadership of the Palestinians in Gaza and West Bank. I can't see it happening. And even in the West Bank, where Mahmoud Abbas is the president of the Palestinian Authority, even those Palestinians are divided. The Palestinians are a factional setup altogether, both in the West Bank and in Gaza. And the prospect of them coming together with so much blood being spilt in the past, I just can't see it. As for the two-state solution, well, they've been talking about that since 1948. It had a chance in 1993 when a peace treaty was signed in Washington between the Palestinians and the Israelis, but that all fell apart in due course. The two-state solution involves Palestinians recognizing Israel as an independent state and Israel recognizing Palestine. But it also involves Israel giving up certain Palestinian territories. And as long as Benjamin Netanyahu is a prime minister to the right of politics, that's never going to happen.
Well, John Cookson, Arise Chief Correspondent, thank you so much for your analysis and your insight. Of course, this is one of the oldest crises in history, so it's difficult to map a way forward, but we thank you for your input today.
Thank you.